Welcome to another video, Purple Political Talk here. Today is Thursday, July 22nd, 2021, and today we're going to be discussing the 2022 United States Senate elections, and I'm going to be taking a look at an updated 2022 Senate election map. So this is going to be my prediction. I'll update these around once a month, so you should be looking out for these videos. But before we get started, I do want to remind you guys to like, subscribe, turn on post notifications to be up to date with our latest content. And also, I want to remind you guys that channel memberships are now open, and that is a great way to help out the channel. And in that spirit, I do want to give a big shout out to our Purple Political Talk channel member, David Maxwell. We couldn't do it without you, and thank you so much. So now that we've gotten all of this out of the way, let's get started with the video. So the 2022 Senate elections are going to be based off of many different things. In certain ways, it's going to be based on pretty much how the Democrats are doing at a nationwide level. You know, how good are they going to be able to cultivate that support nationwide? And at this point in time, the Democrats are in a semi-good position when it comes to the U.S. Senate, just because of how some of these races are currently. So I'm going to talk about some of these races a little bit more in depth. You know, some of these races are certainly going to be a lot closer. I'm going to give shout-outs to the races that are probably going to still be safe or even a little bit closer, but, still would be, pretty much completely safe. For these Senate election maps, I do want to make an alteration. So I'm going to make safe plus 10 or more, and then I'm going to keep everything down. So I want to lower down the safe margin just a little bit, just to be safe. So pretty much I think that this race is going to be very good for most Republicans where they're running. There's, of course, certain races that will be close, and they're going to be the deciding factors in a lot of these races. So this is where I would use the starting off map. I would have, 43 Republicans to 45 Democrats with 12 seats up for grabs. Some of these seats have the possibility of going by more. I would say Colorado for the Democrats. Alaska, I'm going to get into that because there's going to be a very interesting jungle ranked choice voting primary there. Well, it's not. I think they don't. It's a primary challenge, so that's going to be interesting to see. And down Florida as well. So this is where we would start off, and I'm going to start by talking about the likely states for the Republican Party. So these are going to be states that the Republicans are expected to win between 5 and 10%. So these states, I think, include states like Florida. Marco Rubio, he's doing a great job. I think that Marco Rubio is a strong candidate moving forward for the Republicans in Florida. Val Demings, she is somewhat strong. She probably could do somewhat well in the races. However, I do think that Marco Rubio just has a little bit more of an advantage when it comes to this race. He appeals to Florida Latinos, and Val Demings really doesn't have that, big appeal. I think Marco Rubio could certainly increase Donald Trump's support by around 2%. So I think that's why he falls in the likely margin. Other states, I think the Democrats or the Republicans could be doing very well. Alaska. It's gonna be dependent on who wins the primary. We have Shibaka or we have Lisa Murkowski. If Lisa Murkowski, she's gonna get primaried, and I think she might lose her race. Here, it's more of which Republican wins the goes on to the general election, and I think it could be Kelly Shibaka, but I do think that Lisa Murkowski could certainly end up winning that primary if she gains support amongst, those moderate Republicans in Alaska. So going on for the Democrats, the Democrats do have some seats where they're pretty much almost safe. You have Michael Bennet down in Colorado. Colorado is a state that has been voting more and more Democratic over the years, and I really do see Michael Bennet doing very well in this seat. Even with a Republican challenger that could be strong, I still see Michael Bennet winning there. And that kind of already puts the states that I think are going to be at a safe and likely margin, likely being 5 and 10%. Going on to our lean states, let's start off with the Democrats this time. In the lean column, I do see the Democrats holding on to Catherine Cortez Masto's seat in Nevada. I think that while there's some notable Republicans running in this seat, we are still going to see Catherine Cortez Masto probably take a big part of those Las Vegas suburbs. And I think one of the things that we cannot stress enough is that, yes, the Democratic Party in Nevada is ran by Democratic Socialists. But I think it becomes more of a problem of a candidate to candidate rather than the whole state party. That's going to have an impact, going to make the race closer. Because trust me, Nevada should be a state where the Democrats are constantly winning in likely margins. And unfortunately for them, that's not happening. So I do think that Catherine Cortez Masto will end up winning this seat by that margin. And, I think that everywhere else would be less than 1.5% for the Democrats. I think that whilst there is a path to victory in the U.S. Senate for the Democrats, it's going to definitely be a little bit tighter. Although, I'll say this. I think Mark Kelly will definitely win in Arizona. Even with the challengers he has right now with Mark Bronovich, I still do think that he could actually win by around 2 or 3 percentage points, holding that state for the Democrat. And truly, this state is very important for a Senate majority for the Democrats. Without Mark Kelly, I think that it's going to be very hard. And I just think that Mark Kelly is just such a good candidate for that state. So now let's go on to the Republicans. I do think the Republicans have some. I think they could win by a lean margin in Ohio. Also a lean margin in Iowa. This race is actually very interesting. As I am filming this, Abby Finkenauer has actually just announced she's running to challenge Chuck Grassley in the U.S. Senate. Chuck Grassley is old. He might actually lose the race because of his age. But I do think that if he runs, he's probably going to win because he has the incumbency factor. But Abby Finkenauer is actually a very strong candidate that we should keep an eye on. And maybe when we look at my next prediction, maybe this race actually changes in the state of Iowa. In Ohio, it's pretty much right now probably going to be, someone like a Tim Ryan or Josh Mandel running in this race. Against like a Jim Jordan or, so one of those three is probably going to be the big candidates. So I do think in Ohio, the Republicans are probably going to hold on by 4, if not likely margins. I do think it's going to be a closer race, but I do think that it's a state that people should take a look at. And just a quick note about New Hampshire. So I'm going to talk about the state of New Hampshire at the end of the video just because there's a lot of hypotheticals that need to happen before I make that projection. So going on to our tilt states, the states that are the closest, and right now we have a 48-47 Democrats currently in the lead. In the tilt states that go by less than 1.5%. In Wisconsin, I do think that Ron Johnson will hold on. We have strong candidates running in this race. We have Sarah Goldweski and Mandela Barnes. But I do think that Ron Johnson, a lot of people are underestimating him because he is the incumbent. And while he might be a Republican in Wisconsin, Wisconsin was a close state. And I think we have to think that one, Trump is not on the ballot. And some people will say, well, that might be a little bit more of a detractor. That's something that might affect them. However, I do think it's going to be, a better year for in Wisconsin because the Democratic challengers are not as strong as I would say Ron Johnson is, being an incumbent and having those benefits to himself. So that's one of the things I would say. Let's go down to Georgia. I think Georgia would actually go to Raphael Warnock, probably at 1.5% to 2%, depending on who runs. Doug Collins or Herschel Walker. One of those two candidates could be the nominee for the Republicans. And even if Herschel Walker runs, which a lot of people are like, Herschel Walker could win Georgia. I disagree. I think that Raphael Warnock actually has a really good chance of winning this race. He has that African-American support. And with Stacey Abrams' strategy in the state of Georgia, I think without a doubt Raphael Warnock could certainly win that race. Going on to these last 3 races, pretty much deciding factors. The Democrats only need to win 50 seats because Kamala Harris will break the majority. So I would say that in North Carolina, it's going to be a close race. Cherry Beasley would actually make this race actually pretty close. Although I think at the end of the day, we would see a Ted Budd victory in the state of North Carolina. I do think that he could do well. He's endorsed by Donald Trump. And fortunately for the Republicans, the state of North Carolina is just very, very conservative. So I think at the end of the day, that's something that might really end up helping them out. Now, I think that to a certain level, it's also going to impact, and I'm going to talk about a little bit about this after I'm done with filling out these predictions. What is the big conditions that need to happen for everything, like a big wave, a small wave for either party? So we're going to talk about that later. But as things currently stand, I would see North Carolina going to Ted Budd. In the state of Pennsylvania, this race is going to be interesting because pretty much the Republicans don't have a super strong Republican candidate, right, for this race. Well, the Democrats have 2 decently strong candidates. So those would be John Fetterman, and that would be also Connor Lamb possibly. Now, in this race, I do see the Democrats narrowly edging out. It's just because the Republicans don't have as strong of a candidate. Sean Parnell is somewhat of a strong candidate. It would be a close race, definitely. I would have to see more data on Sean Parnell. How would he perform in areas against Connor Lamb or John Fetterman in this race? And if he performs well, I could actually give this state to the Republicans because, the Republicans, they do have their base in this state. It's just not as pronounced as we think. Going on to the last state, and that is the state of New Hampshire. This would okay, and just to give the heads up to you guys, the Democrats take a majority in this prediction. It could be very narrowly, though. In the state of New Hampshire, right now, I'm going to say Chris Sununu is probably going to run. And if Chris Sununu does run, I might actually put this in the lean Republican margin. Maggie Hassan isn't really a strong candidate in the sense that she's kind of boring. And I don't really see her, holding on to her seat. Now, this is if Chris Sununu runs. Chris Sununu is extremely popular in the state of New Hampshire. And it's going to be dependent on whether he runs. He's going to have to give up his governor's race. But, he has to do what he has to do. This is if he runs, and he's probably going to run. If he doesn't run, I would give this state likely Hassan. Likely for Hassan, and I think that the Democrats would get a 51-51 majority. But as of right now, I leave this as my prediction. 50 for the Republicans and 50 for the Democrats. Now, as far as what needs to happen, margins-wise and, country spirit-wise when you go into these midterm elections for this map to take place, I would say. And this is kind of how I'm thinking about it. The current scenario, in my eyes, is pretty much based on a little bit of party fatigue for Biden. Not big piece of non-big piece of legislation being passed in the first 2 years. Those are the two biggest things that I think are going to happen and is going to lead to this 2020 United States Senate map. And I think it would just, continue giving deadlock to the Republicans. So here we can easily see that the map is pretty much essentially the same. The only big flips we have is Pennsylvania and New Hampshire, but those balance out, so it'd be a net zero gain for either party. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a huge thumbs up, like, subscribe, turn on post notifications to be up to date with our latest content. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and goodbye.